It's my kind of filth. I love it. Joining me now in studio to discuss the new season of Dirty Jobs.
Well, there have been many that I've said, no, I'd rather not do that, but my only job on that show is to try, right? So if I did anything smart in this whole crazy...
For years, fans of Dirty Jobs believed they had seen everything Mike Rowe was willing to share about the toughest, dirtiest, and most dangerous occupations in America. But behind the scenes, there has always been a rumor, a whisper that something happened during filming that was kept hidden from the public. A mystery so troubling that the network refused to air it, and Mike himself avoided mentioning it. Until now, just 1 minute ago, brand new information finally came out, and it is so shocking, so unsettling, that viewers who grew up admiring Mike Rowe are struggling to process what really went down. Because according to insiders, there was one episode, one job, that changed everything for Mike. A job so dangerous, so unpredictable, that even the producers begged him not to do it. Yet he insisted, and that decision nearly cost someone their life. What was discovered recently doesn't just reveal a hidden truth. It exposes why that episode mysteriously disappeared, why certain crew members suddenly left the show, and why Mike Rowe quietly changed the direction of Dirty Jobs afterward. The truth is far more serious than anyone expected. Something happened on set, something the cameras weren't supposed to capture, and for years, only a handful of people knew the full story. But today, one of those insiders finally spoke out, confirming the darkest rumor about Dirty Jobs, and explaining why Mike Rowe still refuses to talk about that day in detail. If you think you know Dirty Jobs, think again, because this mystery isn't just solved, it's far worse than fans imagined. Mike Rowe had seen it all, or so he thought. Hundreds of jobs that tested his limits. From crawling through sewers to wading through chemical sludge, he had faced grotesque animals, suffocating environments, and machinery that could maim in an instant. Yet when he arrived at the industrial facility, that would become the center of the most controversial Dirty Jobs episode ever, a deep sense of unease settled over him. It was early morning, the kind where the sun barely kissed the horizon. The air carried a metallic tang that set everyone on edge. A security guard met the crew at the entrance, shifting nervously and constantly glancing back toward the main building. Mike noticed immediately something was off. He had an instinct for danger that went beyond camera lenses or hazard suits. He could sense tension in the air, and this facility radiated it. The day started routine enough: safety checks, camera setups, and briefings. Yet even the facility's own safety officer seemed anxious, skipping details and rushing instructions. "Stay in the designated zones," he said, his eyes darting toward a large section cordoned off with caution tape. Mike raised an eyebrow. A restricted zone was unusual for Dirty Jobs. Normally, the show thrived on transparency. Mike's curiosity led him to ask about the off-limits area, but the supervisor shut him down. "That zone is under maintenance. Corporate orders, no one goes there. Corporate orders." Mike had learned to recognize those words, a euphemism for danger, negligence, or something someone didn't want the public to see. Or still, filming continued. Mike joined a team assigned to clean an industrial sludge pit, a dangerous, labor-intensive task. He donned protective gear, cracked a few jokes to lighten the mood, but immediately noticed the tension in the workers. Their glances toward the restricted zone suggested hidden truths they weren't willing to speak aloud. The smell of chemicals was overpowering, burning through even respirators, making eyes water and throats sting. The first warning came as Mike walked across a steel walkway with a technician. A faint crack echoed beneath their feet. Mike froze. The technician froze. And then, without warning, the metal shifted violently. The walkway buckled. The technician lost his footing, sliding dangerously close to the sludge below. In what felt like slow motion, Mike lunged, grabbing the man's vest strap, his hands slipping in the moisture and chemical residue. Two crew members jumped in to help. Medics weren't on site yet. The alarms blared and panic erupted. The technician screamed, coughing through the fumes, until finally, with combined effort, he was pulled back to safety. The crew was shaken, coughing and trembling. Mike, usually unshakable, felt a chill of dread he had never experienced before. Corporate representatives from the facility arrived within an hour, demanding all footage be surrendered immediately. They claimed the collapse was an accident caused by the crew. Though everyone present knew otherwise, Discovery Channel executives were called in. After reviewing the situation, they made a shocking decision. The episode would never air. Not now, not ever. Production was halted indefinitely. Mike didn't argue. He simply stared at the twisted metal walkway. This wasn't entertainment. It was a near tragedy, a moment when lives had been at stake. He realized that the dangers of this job went far beyond what the cameras had captured, beyond anything the audience could imagine. For years, fans speculated about this so-called lost episode. Some believed it was just a minor mishap, but Mike knew better. Something more serious had happened that day, something corporate wanted buried. And this was only the beginning, because according to an anonymous insider, the walkway collapse was no accident. It was the result of negligence, cover-ups, and a secret so dark it had remained hidden for years until now. After the near-fatal collapse at the facility, the Dirty Jobs crew left shaken and silent. Even Mike Rowe, who had faced horrors in sewers, slaughterhouses, and chemical plants, couldn't shake the feeling that something far worse was unfolding than anyone realized. The walkway incident wasn't just a mechanical failure, it was a symptom of a much bigger problem, one carefully hidden by management and corporate executives. The morning after the shoot, Mike's phone buzzed incessantly with texts and missed calls. Emails flooded in, some marked confidential. One message in particular made his blood run cold. It was from an anonymous source, someone claiming to have inside knowledge of the facility. "You were never supposed to be near that pit. It wasn't an accident. They knew it was unstable," the text read. Attached to the message was a document, a structural inspection report from 6 months earlier. It was stamped with the ominous words, "Failed inspection, immediate repair required." A note scrawled at the bottom read, "Unauthorized use of this containment pit. Must stop immediately. Catastrophic risk." Mike's mind raced. This wasn't just negligence, it was deliberate concealment. Someone at the facility had known the walkway could collapse, and yet they allowed workers to continue using it, putting lives at risk. He immediately called the show's executive producer, who confirmed receiving similar anonymous reports overnight. But Discovery executives made it clear, do not contact the facility. Legal will handle it. Do not discuss this publicly. Mike understood the implication. The network was prioritizing protection over truth. But Mike wasn't willing to back down, not when someone had already died. That evening, another anonymous message arrived, even more chilling. It referenced a worker who had disappeared months before the Dirty Jobs crew arrived. "Ask about the worker who never came back. The collapse isn't the whole story," the message warned. Mike felt his stomach twist. A worker who had vanished, an accident officially erased, a cover-up that stretched further than anyone had imagined. He pressed the sender for more information, but the replies stopped. Silence. Determined, Mike began his own investigation. He contacted former employees, contractors, and anyone who had worked at the facility. Most refused to speak, terrified of corporate retaliation. But eventually, a former contractor agreed to talk. Someone who had seen the dangerous walkway months before Mike arrived. The contractor revealed a horrifying truth. Months earlier, a young maintenance worker named Daniel Marsh had fallen through the very same walkway. He was never filmed, never rescued in time, and his death was quietly covered up. The company reported it as equipment malfunction, and family members were misled to believe it happened off-site. No legal investigation occurred. No record remained. Just silence. Mike's blood ran cold. What he had witnessed firsthand wasn't an isolated incident, it was a pattern. And it was worse than anyone could have imagined. The walkway collapse he saw was merely the second time the structure failed. The first had been fatal, and corporate had erased all evidence. As he tried to process the information, Mike received another anonymous call late at night. The voice was low, urgent. "Mike, you were lucky. You weren't supposed to be in that zone. Someone tried to stop the shoot, but management overruled them. They didn't expect the collapse to happen again." Mike froze. "Again?" he asked. "Yes, the structure was never properly repaired. They just patched it superficially, hoping no one would notice. Your incident wasn't an accident, it was almost inevitable." The call ended abruptly, leaving Mike with a heavy, sinking realization. Corporate wasn't just negligent, they had knowingly endangered lives multiple times. The so-called lost episode wasn't lost due to production mistakes or scheduling. It had been suppressed to protect a company willing to risk human lives for profit. Mike knew one thing. He couldn't let this story end with just a hidden, unaired episode. Someone had already paid the ultimate price. Someone else nearly did on his watch. And now, the full truth needed to be exposed. Because this wasn't just a collapsed walkway. It was a secret, a danger that could strike again. And the longer it remained buried, the worse the consequences would be. Mike Rowe couldn't stop thinking about. And then, the collapse. Watching it unfold again, Mike noticed something he hadn't seen live. The metal walkway didn't snap suddenly. It peeled, buckling in a way that suggested prolonged corrosion, weak patches, and desperate, temporary repairs. Every shutter and crack screamed neglect. But the most shocking part came when the camera captured a tiny detail in the corner of the frame. A set of initials etched faintly into the rusted metal. DM Mike froze. Those were Daniel Marsh's initials, the young worker who disappeared months earlier. It became clear to Mike in that moment. Marsh had known the walkway was unsafe. He had reported it repeatedly. And yet, corporate had ignored every warning, covered up the first incident, and allowed it to happen again. The footage also revealed something else. The so-called repairs weren't repairs at all. Welded patches were cosmetic, covering corroded steel instead of reinforcing it. The walkway was a ticking time bomb, a structure masquerading as safe. The company knew the risk and had chosen profit over safety. Anger and disbelief surged through Mike. He had trusted the network and the facility to protect the crew, but neither had acted responsibly. They hadn't just suppressed an episode. They had suppressed a potential tragedy, one that had already claimed a life. Then came the threats, anonymous calls, hints that the company was watching. One night, Mike received an envelope slid under his office door. Inside, a short note typed, unsigned, "Stop digging." It wasn't an accident. Marsh knew. Now you know. Don't go further. Below the note was a blurry photograph, a young man standing on the cracked walkway, wearing a yellow maintenance vest with the initials DM stitched on the chest. Mike's heart sank. This was the moment before Daniel's fall. The message was clear. Someone didn't want the truth exposed. And yet, Mike also understood something crucial. Hiding it would be complicity. Determined. He reached out to former employees, whistleblowers who had quietly left the facility. Most refused to talk. Fear ran deep. But eventually, a voice emerged, a former safety officer named Melissa Crowley. Her warnings confirmed everything Mike had feared. Marsh's death had been preventable, ignored, and actively covered up. Repairs had been superficial. Safety concerns had been dismissed. And the company had a history of suppressing incidents to protect its reputation. Mike realized the stakes weren't just about a lost episode or a damaged network. They were about exposing a corporate system that treated human life as expendable. The collapsed walkway was a symbol of that negligence, but Marsh's story was the proof. As Mike leaned back, absorbing the footage, the notes, the warnings, he knew the truth could not stay hidden. The Dirty Jobs crew had been fortunate this time. Others hadn't. And if the company's dangerous practices continued, it could happen again. The lost episode was more than unaired content. It was evidence, a record of negligence, cover-ups, and risk to human life. Mike understood, finally, the weight of responsibility he carried, not just to the crew, not just to the audience, but to those who had been silenced. And he knew one thing: the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Mike Rowe spent the next few days in a haze of anger and disbelief. Daniel Marsh's initials etched into the walkway, the suppressed footage, and the anonymous warnings had left him reeling. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. This was not just an accident, or even gross negligence, it was deliberate concealment. And corporate would do anything to keep it hidden. Then came the call that changed everything. It was late one night. An unknown number flashed on his phone. Hesitant, Mike answered. "Mike, I can tell you the whole story," the voice whispered, low and trembling. "I was there. You need to meet me, alone." The caller gave a location, an abandoned diner on the outskirts of town. It was isolated, a place perfect for clandestine meetings. Mike felt the familiar twinge of danger, but he knew this was the only way to learn the truth. He drove through the rain-slicked streets, the diner's flickering neon sign cutting through the darkness. Inside, one figure sat in a booth, hood pulled low, hands trembling over a cup of untouched coffee. Mike approached cautiously. The person raised their head. It was Melissa Crowley, the former safety officer. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Why call me?" Mike asked. "Because Marsh. Because the walkway. What happened to you? It's all connected," she said. Her voice trembled. "And if I don't tell someone, no one will know the truth." Melissa explained what Mike had suspected. Daniel Marsh had reported the walkway's instability for months. He had sent emails, videos, and memos warning of the risk. The corporate office had ignored him. They had wanted the plant running at all costs, no matter the danger. The day he fell, he was inspecting the walkway again. "I told him to wait, that I'd call management. But he refused. He said, if this fails while someone's working, it could kill them." And he was right. Melissa said, her voice breaking. Mike listened, horrified. "Was anyone with him?" he asked softly. Melissa shook her head. "No one." The structure gave way. And when management finally retrieved him, they told us to erase our reports. They falsified the documents, told his family he died off-site. Then they covered it up entirely. Mike felt a chill. The collapse he had witnessed wasn't just negligence, it was part of a dangerous, repeated pattern. Someone had already died under the same conditions. He narrowly survived. Melissa slid a small USB drive across the table. "I saved this. You need to see it. It has the recordings, the reports, everything corporate tried to destroy. It proves Marsh warned them. It proves negligence. It proves the cover-up." Mike picked it up, hands trembling. "They'll come after us if they know we're talking," Melissa warned. "This goes higher than anyone wants you to see. Your network was just the first threat they noticed." Mike leaned back, processing everything. He realized this was bigger than dirty jobs, bigger than a single episode. This was a corporate system willing to risk lives to protect profit and willing to silence anyone who got too close to the truth. Before he could respond, the diner's door creaked open. Both froze. A shadowy figure stepped inside, pausing to look directly at their booth. The air felt thick with tension. Mike's instincts kicked in. Whoever that figure was, they were here for a reason. And it wasn't coffee. Melissa grabbed her bag tightly. "They know we're here," she whispered. Mike nodded. "We need a plan. But first, the world needs to know what happened to Marsh and what could have happened to us." The shadow moved closer, and the diner seemed to shrink around them. Mike realized one undeniable truth. Uncovering the story of Daniel Marsh wasn't just about exposing a lost episode anymore. It was about holding those responsible accountable before more lives were at risk. And Mike Rowe knew deep down that he couldn't walk away. Not now, not ever. The whistleblower had spoken. The evidence existed. And the fight for the truth had only just begun.